The thing we're going to regret the most, I spent a lot of time thinking about technology and its impact on society. We're going to regret the income inequality, the weaponization of our elections, the misinformation. But the thing we're really going to look back on, Drew, and think, how did we let this happen? Is we're going to say, how did we let this happen to our kids?
Welcome back, everybody. It's great to be with you again, to be thinking about mental health and mental fitness and all the various ways that we can do our best in those realms of our life. We have a wonderful guest to talk about that. If you've heard me ask in podcasts, I ask everyone about mental health heroes, mental fitness examples. And we have one of mine on today, Scott Galloway. Scott is a professor of marketing at NYU's Stern School of Business, and he is a serial entrepreneur and author. He's been named one of the world's best business professors, which I think that's got to be great for your self-esteem, by Poets and Quants. He's founded 9 companies. You've heard of many of them: Profit, Red Envelope, L2, and Section, where he also teaches. He is a New York Times best-selling author. He's written The Four, The Algebra of Happiness. He wrote Adrift, which is a book we're going to be talking about most recently, which we'll also talk about, The Algebra of Wealth, which just came out. He has been on the board of directors of the New York Times Company, as well as Urban Outfitters and the Berkeley's Haas School of Business, Panera Bread, and Ledger. He has won multiple Webby Awards and Best Podcast Awards for his podcast Pivot. His books have also been translated into 28 languages. His podcast is the Prof G podcast and the Pivot podcast. So here he is with us, Professor G. Scott Galloway. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much, Doctor. Good to be with you.
You can just call me Drew. It's going to freak me out if you call me Doctor the whole time. Okay.
So
I want to get started right away. You have a new book out, The Algebra of Wealth, and I want you to help us understand a bit about wealth generation, but I'm really curious, how do you think wealth relates to mental health?
Oh, I think there's an immense correlation. I think in America becomes more like itself every day, and that is it's a loving, generous place if you have money. It's a violent, rapacious place if you don't have money. There's been studies showing that the resting blood pressure of children in low-income homes is much higher or tangibly higher than children in middle-income and upper-income homes. In terms of your own well-being of your relationships, most people think that the biggest cause of divorce is infidelity or a lack of shared values. There's a lot of evidence showing that the atmospherics that lead to divorce are usually financial stress. And so your ability to create social capital, your self-esteem, your ability to fulfill what you feel are very basic primal responsibilities, being a good father, being a good provider, are very much correlated to your economic well-being. So I think that, unfortunately, mental health has become too tightly correlated to economic well-being.
What do we do? I mean, so often people are in this state where we have financial stress and we feel it really weighing down on our mental health. And especially we're not sure exactly what to do with it. If we're already working hard. How do you help people in that situation kind of either have a longer point of view or I guess like not freak out in your relationship struggling, you're struggling with money, especially for men who are in this situation? Like what do you advise us to do?
Well, it's situational. I mean, it can be everything from, all right, why do you have to live in a high-cost city? Is there an opportunity for a lifestyle arbitrage? I lived in New York. I was making a lot of money, and I was wildly stressed about money because, I speak very openly about money because I find that this zeitgeist to not talk about money is nothing but an attempt by the rich to keep the middle class and the poor less wealthy than them because they know what everyone's making. It's an asymmetry of information. Anyways, that's my way of trying to apologize for being very brash here. But
no, I like it. Psychiatrists, when they teach us psychiatry, they tell us essentially people never talk about sex and they never talk about money. And if your patients aren't talking about sex or money with you, you're probably not doing your job. And it was very striking as someone in their late 20s that you're going to ask people like yourself about their financial life in explicit terms and their sexual life in explicit terms. But I find it refreshing. So thank you. Let's talk frankly about money. I think everybody listening finds it refreshing. I think one of the things they'll like about you is you're frank. You're like that straightforward, Very got a great daddy vibe, Scott. So we all appreciate it.
Thanks. So, anyways, 2009, 2010, between my wife and I, were making 800,000 million bucks a year, and I felt broke, Drew. I felt like between thinking about two kids in private school. The private school's here, and you don't have to send them to private school, but I'm a bit of a narcissist, and I wanted my kids to play blocks with other children of other rich people, and we didn't love the public school, so we were looking at $62,000 a year for private school, or 125,000. We made just the wrong amount of money. We made enough money to be in the highest tax bracket, but not enough money to not worry about money. So I was going to have to make $250,000 a year just to put my kids in private school. And no one has to put their kids in private schools, but our rent was 16 or 18 grand a month for a 3-bedroom. And I thought, I just don't want to feel, it sounds, I don't want to feel middle class. I don't want to make $1 million a year and feel middle class. So I moved to Florida. And I think kind of a lifestyle arbitrage is one means of the bigger picture. And that is, you need a plan such that you feel as if you have some agency or control. Because I think what is really difficult on people is they feel like they don't even want to look at their bills. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to try and come up with a plan for paying off their debt. They don't want to think about forced savings plans. They don't want to actually do the math. This is when I want to retire. How much money will I need? Back reverse engineer into how much I need to be saving.
Why don't we want to do that, Scott? I mean, it creates so much security, but I feel this in myself. I think everyone listening feels this. We get kind of avoidant.
Well, generally speaking, when you don't know what's going on, that means when you really dig in, it's going to be an unpleasant surprise, and people would rather just ignore it than deal with it or put it off. So I think the first thing is you need a plan. You need total transparency. You need to dig into your numbers and really understand what's going on, where you are, to develop a plan. And right along with that plan is you need alignment with your partner. I think going back to the biggest cause of divorce is typically related to financial stress. I think you have to get alignment with your partner, your approach to spending, how much money you have, don't have, how investments have gone poorly or well, transparency, and then get the team signed up for what are the sacrifices that are going to need to be made to develop a plan. And I think once you start sort of taking control, which can sometimes even mean deciding to declare bankruptcy, which is shameful and awful, but for some people that's a good option if they're really in deep. Or it's saying, look, we're spending too much money on rent, or we need to move, or 2 jobs doesn't make any sense, or we're spending too much on childcare. We'd be better off if one of us stayed home. But just having a plan, speaking to someone who understands financials, don't be afraid to ask for help. Talk to your friends about what they're doing, because as men, we all put up, if you just listen to your friends when you're out with them, you'd think everyone's a millionaire and accidentally making hundreds of thousands of dollars, because to say you're not doing well or you're struggling professionally or financially is to say I'm less of a man than I'd like you to think I am, because we're largely charged with being the provider. So I think it's very healthy to talk about it and also develop alignment with your partner, develop a plan. And then there's a lot of things you can do. None of them are easy, to think about how do I get on track of, being kind of, if you will, financially secure or economically secure.
Well, you're talking about a kind of avoidance that a lot of us have of being just straight up with the numbers and clear with the numbers. As a psychiatrist, I'm always fascinated with that moment where people change. You're drinking too much, you know about it, you stop drinking. You're not having that conversation with your partner, you decide to have that conversation. What do you see as the critical factors where people preemptively, not because it's a panic, but preemptively make that choice to get more, say, financially fluent about themselves and more, just clear?
Unfortunately, I think it happens a lot in a crisis where they lose they're in real danger of losing their house. Or all of a sudden they realize their kid gets into, you're talking about a humiliating moment. Your kid gets into her dream college and you have to sit her down and say, I can't afford to send you.
I'm terrified about the moment, Scott. I think I follow most of your reels. I feel a little bit of a poster boy for your reels. I came from very poor rural Indiana. Now I'm living in Teton County, Wyoming. I'm a professional, on and on. It's great. I still am terrified about that. Or what if they get into medical school?
Right.
I'm a physician. What a dream to pay for that. But I don't know that I'm going to be able to afford it.
Yeah, but see, so let's take that as an example. There are I don't know if they're even around anymore, but there's these 529 accounts where you used to put 5,000 or 10,000 in,
Still
it
got
grows
them. We
tax.
still got them. Yep.
There you go. That's a plan. And then I think at some point, sitting down with your kids, 10th, 11th grade, saying, this is kind of college. This is the cost. This is what we're going to be able to contribute. These are the schools in our weight class. We're not in our weight class unless you get scholarships, but make it such that it's like they say that good marriages are people who have can accept disappointment at a reasonable rate. I feel like sitting your kids down when they're sort of 11th, 12th grade and saying, look, this is how much money I have for your college. This is what college costs. These are the schools where there'd be a gap. Now, you might get financial aid, you might get a scholarship, but I want to set expectations that are reasonable such that, the hard part of relationships isn't bad news, it's surprises. And I think that if you were, for example, in your case, I think what you'd want to do is just be very transparent with your kids around this is what we can afford, this is what we can contribute, this is what you're going to need to contribute. So, but, you know, set it up such that it's not that, oh my gosh, I got into Brown, and the next day it's like, oh, mom and dad just told me we can't afford it. So I think it's having a plan and alignment and being very open and honest. And I think that also sets up really good money habits for your kids to realize that to start connecting opportunity with money and saving and discipline. So I think it's just people need to start talking about money more. I feel one of the things I would like to see more of, and there's some of it, is a class called Adulting, senior year of high school,
Oh yeah.
where they
Can we put a little
where they
mental
talk about.
health part in there too? A little mental health and a little wealth, personal wealth management. I think it would go a long way for America's overall mental health.
I love that. Maybe 3 or 4 weeks on interest rates, mortgage rates, credit cards. This is how people get wealthy. This is how they go bankrupt. These are, generally speaking, the habits of, understand basic financial literacy. This is why stocks are such a great way to build wealth. And then a few weeks on, these are the most common, mental health issues for kids your age. Talk about eating disorders, talk about, you know, when you can, the difference between being down and being depressed. I just think a series of very practical classes for a semester on, getting your heart broken for the first time, the feelings you're going to feel, all that kind of stuff. We have a situation on colleges, and I'm sure you've talked about this, Drew, where um, freshmen show up, and these kids have sort of suffered from a princess and the pea syndrome, where their parents have cleared all obstacles out of their way, and they've used so many sanitary wipes on their lives they haven't developed their own immunities. And these kids have never known disappointment, and they show up their freshman year at NYU and they get their heart broken, or they get their first C or D, and they don't have the skills to deal with it because they've never known that kind of disappointment. And so I think a lot of this would be very helpful. It's like I always say, my kids can do derivatives, but they don't understand how to use a credit card. They don't understand that they have to pay the money back. They haven't quite connected that they're actually spending money.
Yeah, thinking about some of those basic lessons you mentioned, I didn't get a ton of them, but I got some. And things like compounding interest, especially now later in life, I just turned 50. I mean, it feels beyond the money and the number. It feels like I did something right a long time ago for myself in this way that's really great for self-esteem. It's funny. I wonder, why do I look at that number? I remember when I was an intern at New York Presbyterian Hospital, and it was
Hmm.
the end of the year, and my dad said, call up this buddy of mine. He was in one of my classes. He's a finance guy, and I called him up, and he said, make sure if they have any matching, any type of tax deferred plan, make sure and max it out. And I think it was like
Great
five
advice.
grand. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like 26. I can't imagine saving $5,000. We scraped together, we put it away. And, and it just felt like such a big adult accomplishment. And
Well, what
so,
is it now? I love these stories. What is it now?
oh
People need
gosh,
to hear this.
I think it's getting close to six. I watched it like it's like mid five figures. I think it's like 56,000. I don't know. I'll give you the exact number. I'll tell everybody in the notes.
One of the parts of the algebra of wealth, one of the parts of the equation is we just don't understand A, how fast time is going to go, and B, the power of compound interest. So we were talking about private school earlier. Um, the private schools here in New York are 62 grand a year. And I went and spoke to the board of one of them. And I said, well, okay, let's do a quick test. And I said, why do most of you send your kids to private school? Because for a third of people, they have so much money, it doesn't matter. They don't care. Two-thirds of people, though, even in New York private schools, it's real money. If you have three kids, 186 grand a year is real money for most people. And I'm like, well, why do you do this? We want to provide our kids with as much opportunity as possible. Well, what do you mean by opportunity? Well, get into a good college. Well, why do they need to get into an elite college? So they have the opportunities to go to work for a good firm. Okay, why? So they develop economic security and can do whatever they want. Okay, let's talk about economic security. Let's do the following. Let's send them to public school. And there's a lot of studies showing that the best school you can send your kids to for them is the school that's actually physically closest. And then you reinvest that commute time in sleep, play, studying. But let's send them to public school and take that $62,000 a year. And from their age of 4 to 18, we're going to pay tuition, but we're going to pay it to ourselves in the form of we're going to put it all in a low-cost index fund, SPY, that tracks the S&P. And let's assume you screwed up and they don't get into an elite college because the public school isn't as good. And let's assume again you were right again and they don't get as good a job. And oh my gosh, your biggest fears come to fruition. They're not economically secure. You screwed up sending them to that low rate public school. If you pay that money into a low cost index fund and the market continues to perform the way it's performed since the beginning of the markets at about 9% a year, when they're 35, you'll be able to give them $5.4 million to ease their pain. So $5.4 million will ease a lot of economic pain. If you had not purchased an iPhone, but every time an iPhone came out, put $1,200 into Apple stock, you'd have somewhere between, depending on when you invested, somewhere between $800,000 and $2 million. People just don't understand. Your advantage when you're in your 20s, figure out a way to find matching from your work or government programs that take 5% of your salary. Don't even let it get to your hands. Have it automatically taken out. And if you just do that, you make $60,000 a year. If you can figure out a way to put $3,000 away and maybe it's matched, by the time you're my age or by the time you're even your age, Drew, you're going to be fine. Just in case you don't become a baller psychiatrist with a podcast or get lucky selling your company as I did, that doesn't matter. Your plan B is solid. You're going to be rock solid.
It's really it's been wonderfully true in my life, and I think it's something that so many people listening have found security through, of just that steady, kind of automatic investing, that in some ways you kind of turn it on and forget about it, and it creates a lot of security, especially as you age. Scott, I want to pivot a little bit and think about mental health. And just curious, you talk a lot about mental health. You talk a lot about mental health in relationship to fathering and being a man. And I really appreciate all of that. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit of when you started thinking more in mental health terms and how that's helped you.
It kind of, for me, it was in my 40s when I realized it was kind of I remember a specific moment. I call my sister. My dad's been married and divorced 4 times, and his daughter, by his third marriage, she and I actually kind of woke up as adults and realized that we were related and have had a really nice relationship. And I used to call her almost every Sunday night, and I was complaining about something, angry about work, and she said, "Why are you so pissed off all the time?" She said, "You have less reason to be pissed off than anyone I know." She's like, "Look at your life and look how angry and pissed off you are all the time." And it really kind of struck me, and I thought, I'm not a young man any longer, and while I'm enjoying life, it's not giving me the kind of reward and happiness. I have blessings that are enormous, but I have a mood and a demeanor that just doesn't foot to my blessings. And so I started thinking a lot about happiness and specifically managing my mental health. And what I figured out pretty easily was that I struggled with kind of what you would call low grade depression and anger, that small things set me off. I have really a difficult time forgiving myself. I'm very hard on myself. I role play mentally. I imagine confrontations with people and imagine them saying angry or confrontational things to me. And I imagine this digressing into an argument. And I'm like, what am I doing to myself? What am I doing to other people? And so I just started taking it much more seriously. And then I've gotten very involved or kind of passionate about the plight that struggling young men face, or young men in America. And so much of it is related to their mental fitness and their physical fitness, and their mental fitness, what I think are tied together, and just their perceptions of themselves and their ability to connect with other people. So uh, I thought about it. I didn't think about it until my 40s, and now I think about it a lot. And I think it's wonderful the fact that people like you have a podcast like this where people can feel more comfortable speaking about it. But I think one of the healthier things that's happened in America is it's kind of come out of the closet. Remember, no one used to talk about cancer, and then we started talking about it in the 80s and 90s. Really, mental health for many of your viewers that are under the age of 40, we didn't talk about this stuff out in the open. No famous person was going to admit that they were bipolar or that they had an eating disorder or that they were struggling with very severe depression. They just were, because that meant their career was going to be over. People were going to look at them like, oh, there's something wrong. They are dangerous. So this has been a really healthy process for me, and more broadly, I think a really healthy process for America.
What you described, that's kind of a low level depression, sadness, anger, and particularly that internal mental fantasy of a conflict, of people questioning you, very typical inner landscape for men, especially men when they're struggling in some way. I'm wondering if you are directing men in their 20s and 30s to create something differently. Uh, what are your instructions?
So, Drew, I would love to get your feedback because I want to be clear. I'm not credentialed or a licensed therapist. I just talk about what's worked for me and what I see some of the data saying. And I coach young men. And one of the first things I do is I say to them, okay, we're going to find 6 or 8 hours in your phone to reinvest elsewhere. I think of everything as a shareholder in terms of capital. And the capital you have when you're young is time. In between Twitter, Discord, Reddit, Coinbase, Robinhood, and porn, I have no trouble finding 8 hours in their phone. And I'm like, okay, we're going to take 8 of the 30 or 40 hours a week you're spending on these sites, and we're going to reinvest in a few things. We're going to reinvest it. We're going to start making some money. The best way to make a lot of money is to start making a little. If you have a smartphone and you're healthy, you can make money. I don't care if it's an Uber driver, a DoorDasher, working at CVS, Panera starts at $16 an hour. You got to make some money. You got to spend some time in the agency of others, building something bigger than yourself, donating time at a church, being part of an athletic league, being at a nonprofit. But one, I find feeling self-sufficient is very good for your sense of masculinity and your worth, that you're adding some surplus value to. I think we're social beings, and being in contact with other people really helps us. It sets up guard posts. We start to find mentors, friends, romantic partners. I think that's really wonderful. You're going to work out 3 to 4 times a week. I find it the key to my I always call it my antidepressant is working out. If I don't work out, I get very down on myself. And then I'm like, you're going to spend a lot of time with family and friends as much as you can. You're going to force yourself to get out of the house and get out of your own head and stop focusing on your own problems. And then more specifically, I think the biggest threat to young men's mental health right now is the most well-resourced and arguably the most brilliant companies in the world are trying to convince young men they can have a reasonable facsimile of life on a screen with an algorithm. And it's a low risk, low cost entry into sort of almost low calorie, elusive relationships. I don't need friends. I'll just go on Discord and Reddit. I don't need to get a job. I'll trade stocks and crypto on Robinhood and Coinbase. I don't need to go through the rejection, the effort of developing a plan and skills and becoming attractive and funny and following up and enduring rejection to find a romantic partner. I'll just go on YouPorn. But I think all of these things essentially lead you to a point of isolation where you literally, as a mammal, risk real mental health. I mean, the worst thing you can do to a dog is to leave it alone. Orcas, when they're in a tank, they go crazy. So a lot of it is just fitness and being around other people. And I'm curious what you think of those things, but what I have found is that some element or dimension of all of those things are instrumental in not only my mental health, but getting me out of a dark place when I know I'm going into it.
Yeah, I love all of those. I think those are some of the core pieces of mental fitness. And when we think about this conversation, the shift is mental health is something we don't talk about. We're all struggling with secretly. To over the last 30 years opening up, and now I think this new era where it's really time to have mental fitness. Right? We're not going to I'm tired of waiting. Idea I
Mm-hmm.
don't have anything to offer until you're really sick. It's
Mm-hmm.
just ridiculous. And so what you're talking about is how can we kind of think about mental fitness, and these are some of the core tenets: connection, self-awareness. I just turned in Healing the Modern Brain, so which is my new book about mental fitness, and it's all about trying to just better define, kind of put a flag down. Hey, this is a really important attribute. You've got to have some financial literacy. You've got to have some engagement. You need to have a community and invest in it. If you don't feel like going, it doesn't matter. Just like if you don't feel like exercising tomorrow, you're going to, because you know that
Hmm.
bad feeling that's going to come is even worse and avoidable. So I like all of those, and I like also the right away getting men engaged in doing something. When I work with young men, I remember the early in treatment, a young guy came in, and I said, "What do you do in your time with your time?" And he just looked at me, and he said, "Porn." And then he described in very eloquent young male terms that he just felt it was taking all of his motivation and energy to find something real. And he had to
Hmm.
cut that out to kind of almost like save up the energy a little bit and not
Yeah,
discharge
get
it.
your mojo back.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you directly address both money and porn with young men. Uh, it's a wonderful thing to see clinically when men kind of step into. I used to call it the New York City trifecta. You need an apartment,
Hmm.
you need a girlfriend, you need a job. You need a job first thing. You need or a boyfriend, but you need a relationship. And those three things really are the basics in a young person's life. And it was funny to, as you see people pull those pieces together, how much confidence they get, and how much of a sense of purpose they have.
Well,
Uh,
to that point, when I was in college, my first girlfriend, having someone who really likes you and thinks the world of you and wants to have sex with you, it was just such an important part. I needed that basic confidence at that point in my life. I think it really kind of set me up in a lot of ways for success.
I still need
And
that, Scott. I mean,
yeah, we all
it's
need
like,
that.
I mean, I'm so
But
grateful to
here's
have a wife that supports me and likes me, and sent me down here with a pat on the back and encouragement. I mean, it's just if
it's huge. The
finding a
sad
partner
part,
is
the,
key.
the sad the sad part is only 1 in 3 men under the age of 30 has a girlfriend. It's 2 in 3 women under the age of 30 have a boyfriend, because there's this weird phenomena, and that is women are dating older. They want more economically and emotionally viable men. So they're dating older. So only 1 in 3 men has a girlfriend under the age of 30. And 1 in 3 men under the age of 30 in the US hasn't had sex in the last year. And people hear the term sex and their mind starts firing on different neurons. But think of it just as a key step to a relationship. Young men just aren't connecting with
Mhm.
other people. And they're not, the number of high schoolers that sees their friends every day has been cut in half in the last 10 years. So really technology, the thing we're going to regret the most, I spent a lot of time thinking about technology and its impact on society. We're going to regret the income inequality, the weaponization of our elections, the misinformation. But the thing we're really going to look back on, Drew, and think, how did we let this happen? Is we're going to say, how did we let this happen to our kids? And the amount of time these kids are spending on screens and the way it attacks their self esteem, especially among girls going through puberty, the the temptation to stay in and not do the hard work of making connections. I think it's a real, and all the data shows it, mental health and self-harm is dramatically up among young people, and it can be directly correlated to when social media went on mobile. My colleague Jonathan Haidt at NYU has done a ton of great work around here, as Gene Twenge at San Diego State.
Well, and they're making a difference. It's wonderful. It's been wonderful to see their work. The Anxious Generation came out, and just a huge, huge amount of attention on this, to the point that I'm hearing rumors, seeing things where states or places like New York City are considering getting rid of cell phones in high schools, middle schools. I mean, it just sounds wonderful.
Whole countries are doing it.
Well,
Yeah,
and
it really is.
at some point, it's the nice thing about being in an era where we have data, we have science, we have folks like yourself and your colleague John who are translating it for us very effectively. That we've got to, as we just saw, there are hard decisions sometimes that we have to make. But when we make them, and whether it's about our money or whether it's about our president or whether it's about cell phones in schools, when we look at the data clearly and we make clear-eyed decisions, it leads to good things. That's our intent. So, I, I want to talk a little bit about how productive you are. because I think a lot of people, especially a lot of men that I speak to, and I'd love to hear more about your coaching. I think probably something we share. It's really wonderful seeing men tap into their potency and think about redefining modern masculinity a bit. And before we pivot, actually, I want to hear your thoughts on, the new man. As you're raising your
Hmm.
son, we're both raising sons. I think we have sons. I think yours is a little older than mine. Oddly, if you believe in the grand unconscious, Scott, I saw your post about the US Navy workout. My son was in the gym yesterday. He looked at me and he said, I'm going to do this US Navy workout that's here on the machine. And he clicked it and started riding along. I don't know what that means, but I thought it was just a wonderful little moment. But will you tell us a little bit, as you're raising your son and you're thinking about him being a man in the world, or maybe you have two kids, I'm not sure, but what are you thinking we need to do differently for our sons? What do we need to teach them?
I struggle with it. I think that we need to redefine masculinity. But first, we need to acknowledge that it's a wonderful thing, that femininity is a wonderful thing, and masculinity is a wonderful thing. And also to embrace masculinity or celebrate it is in no way, in my opinion, to say that you don't have empathy for people who are non-binary or people who decide to change the way they present their sexual orientation. It's become a bit of a zero-sum game where people think you lack empathy for the other gender, or what happened was the following: is that young men on almost every dimension have fallen further faster than any cohort in America. Women globally have ascended dramatically. There's twice as many women elected to parliament in the last 30 years. More women are seeking tertiary education than men globally. And then in the US, men are 4 times as likely to kill themselves, 3 times as likely to be addicted, 12 times as likely to be incarcerated. Single women own more homes now than men. In urban areas, women under the age of 30 are now earning more than men. And we should do nothing to get in the way of that. We should celebrate the progress of women. The tough part is that if you're going to have an honest conversation around mating, you have to have an honest conversation. And that is, women are not interested in mating typically with a man socioeconomically who is inferior to them. Women mate socioeconomically horizontally and up, men horizontally and down. And when the pool of viable mates, horizontal and up, keeps going down, you have less household formation and less connection, less lower birth rates, bad for the economy, bad for mental health, and has kind of what I would describe as the biggest epidemic in the United States, and that is loneliness. So what I'm trying to do with my young men is help them embrace their masculinity. I'm working out with them, and I do this weird trick. There's kids. So it's not like I can sit down with PowerPoint slides. And I'm like, this is what a man does. When friends are coming for the weekend, a man jumps up and goes and gets their luggage and puts it in the room. That's what a man does. A man picks up a bottle of water on the table and he pours everyone's glass first. That's what a man does. A man immediately moves to protection. If there's a new kid in school and that person is being picked on, there's a part of you that wants to join in, a part of the crowd. Men move to protection. That's their go-to. They move to protection. If you hear about a group being demonized or bullied, you don't need to understand the issue. Your first move as a man is to protection. And also, you're a provider. You need surplus value. You need to figure out a way at some point how you're providing more value than you're taking. And I say to my kids very explicitly, you're taking more than you're giving right now. We give you a lot of love. We get some back, but not as much as we give you. Your school's spending all this time on you. We're spending all this money on you. At some point, you need to think about how you start to care for others, how you start to make more money than you're spending, how you start to teach more than you're being taught. And another thing I talk about, and sounds strange, I talk about men's role as a procreator. I'm like, you need to be confident enough and have the skills to initiate dialogue with people you are interested in. And there's nothing wrong with that. You don't, there's a huge difference. If you don't know the difference between initiating contact and harassing someone, you got bigger problems. But it's our job as men to be aggressive, to call people, to ask for coffee, to find people, to find a job, to walk into a place. One of the proudest moments I had as my kid, we were on vacation, went into a CVS and asked for a job application. We didn't know why he wanted to go to CVS. He said, I just filled out a job application, and I just wanted to start crying. I'm like, that's the key to success. Is you're supposed to be aggressive. You're supposed to go up to people. I force my kids to talk to strangers at least once if we leave the house. I'm like, it can be in the coffee line, it can be petting someone's dog and asking them their breed, but you are still supposed to initiate contact as a man. So I go back to protector, provider, and procreator, and busting these myths that come from the far right and the far left that aren't helpful. The far right sees masculinity as being tough and mean and a little bit treating women like they're a different, almost like a different class, and just being, generally speaking, a little bit oppressive and obnoxious and
Well, there's a
coarse.
superiority in that definition of masculinity. Women are here to be in service of us. It kind of unfortunately takes all the wonderful roles that women can play for a family and a man and makes it into a kind of this traditional thing, not a modern and evolving.
Yeah, and even more unhealthy than that, it's real men don't take shit and get back in people's faces and are aggressive and
Right.
coarse and mean. And I find it, I, you know, people look at a guy like Elon Musk and think there's a real man, and he has some amazing attributes of innovation, and he's a risk taker, and he's a genius. But he'll say he'll distribute conspiracy theories that make people need to move from their home because he'll circulate a falsehood that someone is intimate that they're a sexual predator. That's just in everyone's. Oh, he tells it like he tells it like it is. The coarseness that's been equated with masculinity, and then on the far left, basically masculinity is be more like a woman, and I don't think that works either.
Well, masculinity is toxic, and I do, as you're talking about kind of procreation and providing and protection, I keep thinking about my wife, because a lot of the attributes that you're talking about, sort of teaching men, pour everyone's water first, look to others. I feel like I've learned a lot of that or gotten a lot of great feedback on that from the women in my life. And so I've really been trying to differentiate in my own mind, kind of clinically and almost ethically, like what actually are the differences between, kind of masculinity and femininity in a certain way, because I'm sure that you think of your wife also as a provider, protector, and so it's a struggle I've been having to really like, what is it that is actually gendered and not just a human trait? What is it really that men possess that's unique and can be celebrated? I heard recently the best male energy was the ability to create appropriate boundaries. Such like I don't know, maybe because I'm a psychiatrist, I love that word boundaries, but I thought it was such an interesting way to think about, kind of capturing some of what you're talking, protecting, but also creating boundaries for things like conversation, or interventions when people are bullying.
So your point is a great one, and that is I'll describe these things, and then someone will say to me, Scott, you just described your single mother. She was a provider and a protector of you. And the way I've tried to reconcile this is that I think masculinity and femininity are social constructs. We make them. And what I would suggest is that masculinity isn't the domain or the provenance solely of people born as male. I think a lot of women demonstrate outstanding masculinity. I used to do CrossFit. I can't anymore. I'm getting injured now. One of the things I loved about it was we celebrated strength for both genders. Like there were I had a lot of female firefighters in my CrossFit gym, and they didn't have your traditional kind of feminine body, and we celebrated just their raw strength, and it was wonderful. And I think a lot of women demonstrate amazing masculinity. Also, a lot of men demonstrate wonderful femininity. My closest friends are more feminine in terms of their demeanor. They're very caring, graceful, nurturing. I'm drawn for friends. Those are the kind of men I'm drawn to. But I think we need to celebrate both and realize that people born as men have an easier time leaning into more masculine attributes, which isn't to say they might not just demonstrate wonderful feminine attributes. And a lot of women, people born as women, usually in general, have an easier time leaning into more feminine attributes, which doesn't mean they're sequestered from masculine attributes, doesn't mean they can't be admired for their masculine attributes. But let's celebrate both and honor them both, and maybe even use them as an interesting guidepost for men as they're trying to figure out their own identity.
Yeah, I've been really enjoying. Thank you for all that, Scott, and I'm just thanks for this conversation so far. It's really personally meaningful, and I'm sure everybody listening, it's just great to be talking about. I love your fluency with all the stats about how men are doing these days. It's been really interesting being out in a mountain town and seeing all these, just incredibly tough mountain men. Like my partner here is like the medical director of ski patrol and an ER doc, and, guys are going
Right.
out and, just doing these things. And then the women are just incredibly strong. Just can, hike me, bike me, swim me just into the dirt. I mean, it's amazing to be in a place where kind of level of fitness and toughness is very ungendered in a way. It's very, equality here and a kind of celebration of both in a way that's really, I don't know, been a little unique for me. Um, Scott, as we're talking about mental health, I want to talk about alcohol a little bit. I was really struck by one of your newsletters. If you don't get Scott's newsletter, everybody, I recommend it. I love the description of you with your Vishla. We've got a Bernedoodle pup who's constantly with me now and just such a source of pleasure. But you were talking about alcohol and you're talking about that having a drink and people kind of liking that version of you. And I wonder if you could share a little bit about what do you think's going on there? And so many men struggle with alcohol in a kind of, let's say, sort of benignly pernicious way. Couple drinks.
Oh yeah.
I was one of those guys for a long time. Just never hit criteria for a problem, but it's a lot of alcohol over time. And I just
Yeah.
wonder if you can share a little bit about your relationship with alcohol, if you don't mind, and just what do you
Sure.
think's going on with men and alcohol?
So, look, I don't have an addictive personality. I've never had trouble physically wanting any substance. I absolutely love alcohol, and I think it's been a net positive in my life. I've got more out of alcohol than it's gotten out of me, what Winston Churchill said. But I also, I'm naturally an introvert, and most of my career has been built on being an extrovert. And that is, I had strategy consultancies. I was a teacher, so my ability to be successful was also a lot of times a function of taking clients out to dinner, vacationing with them, establishing contact with people. I found alcohol was really useful for me in terms of meeting potential mates. I'm not proud of that, but I found I had an easier time approaching strange women after one or two drinks.
Well, I mean, I appreciate you being frank about that. I mean, I think most people, men and women, feel a little, like a little social lubricant helps with the type of anxiety. Uh,
Yeah.
have you seen anything else that does that as well?
That's a really good point. I would say what'll make you feel anything that makes you feel confident, working out, being in good shape, taking pride in your appearance just gives you a little bit more ease approaching strangers, and then getting into the habit. I mean, this is the story I tell, and that is I was at the Raleigh Hotel, a hotel in South Beach, and met a friend. They had this pool party there every Sunday with DJs. And I walked in and I saw what I felt was a very attractive woman. And I said, I do this all the time. I promised myself I was going to speak to her before I left, you know, and she was with another woman and another man. And it was never really easy to just kind of walk up in the bright sun of midday and just try and open. And so I went out to go get my car and I thought, shit, I promised myself I was going to talk to her. And I went back in, I rolled up and I said, hi, where are you guys from? And long story short, 18 months later, our first son's middle name is Raleigh after the hotel where we met. And the reason I tell it in my class is that I say nothing wonderful is ever going to happen to you unless you take an uncomfortable risk. And so you want to get used to taking uncomfortable risks. Most people are not comfortable with public failure, talking to strangers, sending an email to someone who may not email you back, applying for jobs that are out of your weight class. All of these things, starting a business, starting a podcast when you're a doctor such as yourself, you're risking public failure. It takes money, it takes time, it may not work. So unless you're willing to take these uncomfortable risks and start taking them at an early age, I'm not saying you can't be successful, but you're not going to end up with a better career than you deserve. You're not going to end up with a better mate than you deserve. You're going to be at your weight class or lower, and we all want to punch above our weight class. So alcohol for me helped. What I realized is that, quite frankly, my 59-year-old liver can't process alcohol the way it used to. And I'm a really good drunk. I'm a better version of me with a little bit of alcohol. I'm friendlier,
You
I'm
mean it
more
just
extroverted,
like a little looser, a little friendlier, a little more.
funnier, more outgoing, more engaged, more affectionate, smiling more, just quite frankly, just a more lively, likable person. And I'm a good drunk. I'm not sloppy. I'm not mean. I'm not one of these guys. And I never really, the next day I could work. But as I got older, I realized, okay, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'2", 187 pounds. And, do that test when you go in and speak to your doctor. Well, how often do you drink? And he basically said, okay, let's add it up. You're drinking a half a bottle of Maker's Mark every 7 days. He's like, that just can't be good for you. And you also forget, as you get older, when I would get drunk the next day when I was 28, I have a greasy breakfast and a couple Advil and boom, I'm back in action. Now I feel as if I've had chemo. So I realize that it's time for me to start scaling back. I haven't given it up. Quite frankly, I've replaced some of it with THC. I take edibles now once or twice a week. I enjoy that. I like being drunk or high. I'm not afraid to admit that. I enjoy it. It's something I do with my wife that it bonds us. We have a good time. But I realize I need to scale it back. And also, I think alcohol is really old technology and is especially punishing. So I'm just trying to manage my substance intake and just reduce it because I want to think more about health and also realize that for every drink I take now, it's going to do more damage than probably 2 or 3 drinks did maybe 20 years ago. So I just need to moderate it. But it's played a big role in my life and it's mostly been positive, which I don't, which sounds weird to say.
It just sounds honest, Scott. I just appreciate the honest talk. I appreciate you letting everybody know that, you and your wife have an edible and have a little drink and have some fun, and that's okay.
We watch TV. It's pretty boring. We watch original scripted streaming TV.
I think you laugh. I bet you hold hands.
Yeah,
I think you
that's
connect,
right. We're affectionate.
probably.
Dogs lie on us. It's great.
Yeah. Also, to me, it reminds me a little bit of how sometimes I feel the psychedelics or the ketamine-assisted therapy is working. Of it gives people a feeling or a kind of affective state. When you get a little messed up, or you have a little, like just trying a little alcohol, feel a little more confident. Kind of bridges a gap that then that bridge kind of often stays. If there's a type of, let's say, loss of anxiety or a calm, confident state you can get to in a psychedelic journey, right? Really settle down. The next day, even if you're back in your life, there's something about that you kind of take with you, it feels like to me. So I just appreciate your honesty and your frankness about it. It's a difference, I think, folks, between substance use, using substances to enhance life, to learn things about ourselves, to experience things, and substance use disorders, where where it's taking more from us than it's giving to us. I do wonder what the alcohol, Scott, just personally, because I think I'm like you. I'm not me. I'm fun. It's funny. My wife and I were looking through photos from back in the day, and I always had a beer in my hand. We'd be out in the woods with the kids. I'd have a beer in my hand, and I have a big smile. And I was kind of a goofy guy. I still am a little bit, but it's weird after not drinking for like 3 years.
So you gave it up 3 years ago?
Yeah, we moved here to Jackson, and it's such a drinking town. We actually were moved down the street from this liquor store that has these amazing grapefruit sloshies. It was just easy to drink them, and I don't know. There's a couple of different reasons went into it for me, but it's more of I've been wondering about that part of the self, that slightly disinhibited, more fun, and especially because it's the drug of choice for people. And you go out, you're going to go out with your buddies, and they're always I invite people for kombucha, but and people come, but it's and then it's funny after a few years where you just honestly just don't think about it. It's just kind of the awkwardness, the strangeness. It's not. I don't know.
I think I'll probably get there at some point. It's and I always want to take advantage when I'm with a credentialed professional such as you. But going back to mental health and alcohol, the largest study of its kind on happiness found that when you segmented people into quintiles from happiest to least happiest, the thing that was most prevalent in the least happiest was a presence of alcohol. And what I do when I can feel myself, I have an early warning system when I'm going dark, as I call it. I feel very hollow. I don't even feel sad. I just feel nothing. I stop working out. I stop eating. I just kind of shut down and become very withdrawn. And I feel like my body is almost like a balloon that could pop. I don't feel sad. I just feel nothing. And now I'm at the point where I can recognize that. And I have this acronym of activities and actions that I immediately thrust into to try and immediately sort of arrest that downward spiral. And it's the following. And the acronym is SCAFA. And I would just love your feedback on this. And it's SCAFA. And the S stands for sweat. First thing I do is sweat. I'm like, that kind of is like resetting the computer for me. I sweat.
Does it have
The
to be
se-
exercise? Can it be sauna? Can it be sex?
That's
I
an
mean, just
interesting point. For me, it's always been exercise. I don't know if I'd get the same thing sweating, but for me, it's I immediately take a really long run and work out really hard and really trying to exhaust myself.
like put on the shoes and not like I'm going to go begrudgingly do a mile. Like I'm going to run until I like can't handle it anymore.
I'm gonna hit it hard. I'm gonna sweat hard and really go at it. Um, the C is clean. I try and eat not eat out, no preservatives, no butter, just eat kind of clean, right? And the A is abstinence, not abstinence from sex, but abstinence from THC and alcohol. I just stop. I just say, you know what? I don't know what sensors it's pounding, and I love both those things. But when I go dark, I just decide I'm just going to take a break and just try and get clean. F is family. I find that my boys are so goddamn demanding and can be such jerks that it's impossible for me to be in my head because I have to manage them. And then the A is affection. I try and spend a lot of time with my boys. I'll even tell my wife and my boys I'm not feeling great, and they know that means like when we flop on the couch, they throw their legs over mine. My wife tries to be especially affectionate with me. And I think touch is really restorative. Anyways, SCAFA is my means of arresting this doom loop when I'm starting to go dark. I'm curious what you think.
Resonates with me a lot. I don't have an acronym for it, but similar activities definitely are on my mind as I'm feeling down. Sometimes I get into headspace a little bit of almost not wanting to engage in them, like almost like a masochist. Like maybe that's because I'm a physician. Like I know what's going to make it better, but what I like is that you have a plan, and I also like the SCAFA because you don't have to. You just need to know those 5 letters. And I really am wondering how, and I think this for men and women, anyone listening, how do you get into a stance where you've let your family know, you're both like the powerful poppy, you're really helping co-lead this family, but I'm in this bad space. I need you guys to cuddle me. I need some snuggles. I mean, that seems like a really hard place sometimes for folks to get to.
I think it's really important. I didn't learn to do this until about 10 years ago now. I would say, I'm much more comfortable saying this to my wife than to my kids because I always want to view myself as a pillar strength for them. But I will say to her, I am not doing well right now. I need you to be especially patient with me or help me out here, but I'm not doing well. And I don't, it doesn't happen. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen to me more than once or twice a year. But I finally come to grips with saying, yeah, like I'm having issues right now, and I would appreciate any additional patience or, just generally, you know, affection, physical and non-physical, around this. But that's sort of the key, and I think it's also the key professionally is your willingness to ask for help. You asked about my productivity. People have this impression that I work 7 days a week, 18 hours a day. I bet I work maybe 40 hours a week. I don't. I used to work very hard up until about your age. I worked from the age like 25 to 50. I pretty much did nothing but work. And I decided to dramatically slow down. And my kind of superpower, my competence is storytelling, but my superpower is I've always been pretty good at attracting and retaining really talented people. Prof G Media is 14 people. Everybody thinks it's me writing and doing these videos and, speaking in these they think, my God, you're so productive. No, I have really talented people that I'd like to think I treat well, uh, leveraging my skills. But I'm not, people think I'm going to get on one of these programs and say, I'm up at 5, I do a cold plunge, then a sauna, then I meditate. I very rarely get up before 9 a.m. I usually don't get going or do anything till about 11. I just to get my act together. I work till 6 or 7. That's about it. And I kick off. And I take probably 4 months of vacation a year at this point in my life. Now, granted, I can take my podcast setup with me on the road, but I've spent the first 50 years of my life making money. I'm going to spend the next 30 or 40 spending it. And I really enjoy not working as hard, but I'm not nearly as productive as people think. What I can do to have a really nice life without being one of these monsters of productivity is I have really talented people who I treat well and help really leverage my time.
Thank you, Scott. I realize we're coming to a close of my time with you, unfortunately, and I have a few more quick questions. And so I want to
Sure.
just get to them. One is what you're speaking about, which is about institutions. I think people really struggle to have to trust institutions. We hear a lot in academia. They don't love you back, or the institution doesn't love you back in a certain way. And I'm wondering how you recommend people have a more appropriate relationship with institutions, because it feels like something we're really struggling with as a country right now. We've got a lot of suspicion, a lot of questioning, and when I think, I'm here because of the amazing institutions that helped kind of craft me and make me.
Oh yeah. Look, I'm an atheist, but I believe religious institutions. I think it's a shame that church attendance is way down. My dad being married 4 times, man, I went to Temple, Unitarian Church, Presbyterian Church, and while I never bought into the notion there was a super being or an invisible friend with us, they were really a positive influence on me. And I met a lot of friends, met a lot. My first high school dance, I played on the Latter-day Saints church softball and basketball teams. There was a Mormon church near me, and it was absolutely a wonderful influence on me. So I think institutions are really important. I personally, one of the things I'm really advocating for is I believe that we would benefit from mandatory national service. If you look at teen depression, one Western nation that has arguably the lowest levels of teen depression is Israel, despite the fact they have existential threats all around them. And I believe it's because they serve in the agency of something greater than them, their country, and it's mandatory. I was just in Israel, and I went to the Nova Music Festival memorial, and I was with an IDF troop battalion, 120 young men and women. They're all in great shape. They all have semiotic weapons, which means they have to learn skills and understand responsibility, how to make decisions, how to look out for your fellow woman or man, your fellow soldier. And they have some of the lowest levels of teen depression. So I would love to see mandatory national service. It doesn't necessarily have to be military. It can be healthcare. It could be senior care. But until we get back to, I think because we haven't been invaded, never really faced an external threat, social media, I think young people are losing a sense of just how incredibly fortunate they are to have the freedoms that they're afforded in this country and the opportunity and the prosperity, and quite frankly, aren't in touch with just how many people sacrificed and the cost, not the right, but the cost and the privilege of having these incredible opportunities and rights. So I'm a big believer in institutions, and I think we need more connective tissue with our government. I, like you, am a function of big government. I got Pell Grants that gave me an opportunity to go to UCLA and Berkeley. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be here with you. So I would like to see a return to all of us serving in the same uniform, if you will, for a couple of years.
Yeah, the taxpayers of Indiana in some ways brought me here, of going to IU Medical School and then being able to leave, kind of as you're saying, without with some financial self-esteem, because of just being supported and getting some scholarships, but also having institutions that were there to support me. And it's I just think it's something for everybody to listen, especially wherever you are in life, whether you're young and needing to connect to some institutions and the mentors that often come with those, or whether you're kind of midlife like I am, where I find there's this a part that people didn't show. You need to kind of refresh things. There's a lot of institutions, a lot of people you've been involved with. You really need to kind of, in some ways, take stock. Scott Galloway, what a treat to have you on. Thank you so much for sharing some time and all your wisdom about health, mental health, wealth. Everyone, check out the book, The Algebra of Wealth. Check out the podcast and follow Prof. G for all of his great advice. Scott, thank you so much. I really appreciate the conversation. I look forward to talking more in the future.
Thank you, Drew, and thanks for your good work.